Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Divorce and Separation Code podcast. Today, we're talking about clean break orders. That's often a theme that's misunderstood, especially because in England and Wales, you can actually get divorced without having a financial order in place that settles the financial implications of your divorce. And even if you have one, it doesn't necessarily sever the ties that you have financially with your former spouse. So to understand a little bit better what a clean break actually is, how you obtain one, and why, I've invited Celia Conrad to join us today. Celia is a solicitor. She specializes in family law, and she has worked for several London law firms before leaving private practice and then became a full-time writer, a legal consultant, and a coach on family law matters. Celia has published legal handbooks. She's appeared on television. She's given evidence on family law to parliamentary committees, and her comments on legal reform have been published in the press. So, needless to say, Celia knows what she's talking about. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Chloe. Delighted to be here today.
So this is a slightly complex topic, and as I said, often misunderstood. So maybe we should start with the basics. Could you explain to our listeners what a clean break order is in the context of divorce and how it's different from other types of financial settlements?
Yes, so I'm going to take it a step back, actually, before I even get to that. I'm going to talk about the two pathways, because people confuse the divorce process with the financial process, and they are separate.
Yeah.
So when people say I'm divorced, I always say to them, oh, so you sorted out your finances then? And they go, oh, no, I've sorted out my divorce. I said, oh, well, you are divorced, but you haven't sorted out your financial settlement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something, and it's really, really important, because when we talk about the finances moving forward, if you haven't sorted them out, 10 years down the line, someone could come back and make a claim, and you don't want that. So when we go through this divorce process and we're going through it, we also are looking at the finances as we're going through it.
Yeah.
And so that you want to try and tie them up so that you don't get your final order for divorce until you've sorted out your finances.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of clean break is obviously what it actually is. Literally, it is literally severing, the ties between parties formally and finally, so that one party can't come back against the other and vice versa, dismissing both parties' claims, i.e. financial claims.
Yeah.
So divorce and obviously civil partnerships is very different from, say, for example, if you are cohabiting and you split, you'll probably come to a cohabitation deed or agreement, which is a signed agreement, which is a contract, which is enforceable in law, but it's not the same as the divorce process, which is through the court process. So that's different. So that's where you get this differentiation, the difference with divorce. So in terms of a clean break, it relates to all the finances. So we're looking at capital and income. So when I talk about capital, I'm talking about property, your home, lump sum payments, i.e. a big cash sum, 50,000, 500,000, pensions, which is a whole huge topic in itself. And then the income, we're talking about maintenance, ongoing support. Now, to be a clean break, we have to have basically financial separation for both capital and income. That will be a full clean break. But what often happens is that we can sort out, say, the capital, but we don't have the formal, full clean break because there's still maintenance being paid. And it's the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance, and there's various forms. I can talk about those, how that plays out. So that's kind of the foundation for a clean break.
Clean break means you're cutting all ties. You're no longer responsible for the other person's debts, or similarly, if they come into some inheritance or win the lottery or whatnot, you can no longer have a claim to those finances because that is now completely separate.
Exactly. And that's what's really important, because say, for example, you don't have that down the line, someone could get a massive inheritance. They could win the lottery. They could change their jobs. They set up a company. And it has happened that people have come back where they haven't had the financial order setting out what the terms of the settlement are.
Yeah.
And they've come back and the court said, well, you didn't have a financial settlement. It wasn't finalised.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid the claims are still open because you have to dismiss the claims. They call it dismissing the claims when you go for when you do your financial settlement. But in terms of the actual finances, so for income, so I think it's really important to think about it's not always appropriate maybe to have a clean break at a particular time. So, for example, in terms of maintenance, so somebody might be disabled. They might not be able to work, or they have limited earning capacity. Mm-hmm. And if there's not, say, sufficient capital to buy out their claim and to give them the lump sum so that can be invested so they can generate an income, then they would need to have an ongoing income. Now, the court's very, very clear. The court talks about we have got to try and make parties independent as soon as possible. Yeah. And they talk about even if there's hardship to do that, but not excessive, undue hardship. So this is very, very important. So, but at every stage, they would be looking at to see if they can make parties independent. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of three forms of maintenance. One is they call it joint lives. And that really is in terms of you would get it until you remarry or you die. Now, if
just to clarify, Celia, this is spousal maintenance you're talking about,
yes,
not child
spousal maintenance. Yes, because child maintenance doesn't actually, it's very rare that it comes within the court process because of the separate CMA, obviously the child support that you can go obviously do that, unless parties agree, of course, and they're going to pay. But term maintenance, so that would be for unless someone remarries or dies. Now, if you could be, say you're, I don't know, in most cases, probably the wife who is probably receiving maintenance still. So, but say she remarries, then obviously she would lose the right to that maintenance, or obviously if either party dies. If her ex dies and she's got undue hardship, then she might be able to bring a claim still against his estate under the Inheritance Provision Dependents Act 1975. So that's because she has a dependency under the estate. So that's quite extreme. Then you've got the spousal maintenance, which would be, say, for a term, in other words, a term of years. So that it might be paid for 5 years or up, say, until, now you talk about the children here, up until, say, the children are 18 or in full-time university education. So that might be another thing. And then you also have what we call a step-down maintenance, where you can start off with a certain amount and it's reduced every year, say for a period of a few years, to allow someone to get back on their feet.
Okay. So that's also a temporary solution.
Exactly. And then at that point, it would end. Now, there's also something as well called nominal maintenance, which might be just a very small, like 5p order, which keeps the claims open in case someone needs to go back to court if their situation changes. Not necessarily desirable for, one of the partners, because obviously there's always that danger that somebody could go back. Yeah. Then, of course, we also have an ability to go back to court to vary maintenance. So, for example, if you were in that nominal order and something happened to you, you lost your job, you couldn't work, or whatever various things happening, or expenses were, I think, all sorts of life-changing circumstances, you might go back to the court and ask to vary that maintenance for the court to give you that maintenance. If you've got a certain level of maintenance already and you don't think it's enough or things have happened, you might go back to ask the court to vary it, to increase it. Of course, the court can make the decision to not do that, or basically to vary it down, or not to extend a term. So there's always the risk of doing that, because at that stage they again will be looking at, is this reasonable? Can we make these parties independent? Because obviously the duty of the court is to make the parties as independent as possible. Yeah. So there's lots of variables, and obviously, like with everything, we always talk about everybody's case is different, everybody's situation is different, and so much is going to depend upon your own personal circumstances. So, if you're going to give someone advice or guidance about that, they need to understand all the possibilities and the probabilities.
Yes,
But we're not crystal ball gazing. It's trying to literally cover off all bases to make sure that people are protected.
that makes
Uh,
sense. Yeah. So just to understand, no matter which form of spousal maintenance is agreed upon, do all the examples you've just given us prevent you from having a clean break, or can you combine both?
so I mean, if you've got maintenance that's ongoing, it's not going to be a clean break because it's still ongoing. But obviously you could
Yeah.
clear off, but it could be a partial clean break in the sense that you have clean break as to capital claims. So you may have dealt with the
Okay.
property, dealt with a pension, dealt with all those other things, life insurance policies, all those other things, cleared those off and separated those out. And that is the
Yeah.
part that remains,
Okay.
right? So in an ideal world, obviously it'd be great to have a complete clean break so that you have, both parties can split. And again, that's going to depend on how much money is in the pot
Hmm.
and the circumstances, how old people are in terms of their earning
Yeah.
capacity, how well they are, situations with children.
Hmm.
So, there's again a lot of variables.
Yeah. Okay. So when we're thinking about getting a clean break, and we really want 100% full clean break, but there is a need to support the other person, is a lump sum some payment the solution then in that case to make sure that that person's needs are met, but you're still getting that clean break?
Yeah, if there's sufficient money, sufficient capital,
Hmm.
so the maintenance was we would term it as maintenance being capitalized. If there is sufficient money, then yes, you could literally buy out someone's claim.
Yeah.
And then obviously then you have a clean break and it's a full clean break and it clears off everything, inheritance, everything moving forward. So there's no danger of anybody coming back if you suddenly win the lottery. So,
So you've touched on the advantages of getting a clean break. Are there any possible disadvantages?
well, I mean, that's why you need to get careful advice. I mean, you've got to be very clear on pensions.
Hmm.
You've got to be very clear on making sure there's been what we call full disclosure, that you know
Yes.
exactly what your partner, your ex has got before you come to any agreement, and then you agree to something that's suddenly fine. I mean, yes, there are situations when you could turn around, and this is a whole new topic in itself, of overturning an order because someone didn't give that full disclosure and
Yes.
it was a detrimental impact on the case and obviously on the settlement. But yes, and that's why it's very, very, very important that all those factors are taken into account, really. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, for couples who do want to get a clean break, who don't want to have to deal with any kind of
Yeah.
financial ties going forward, how do they go about obtaining that? How do they request that order?
Well, generally, I mean, this is obviously the court process, so they can, you may not be you may decide something. You could, so various routes. You could be amicable, and you can come to agreement as to your finances, and you could do is what they call voluntary disclosure of your finances yourself, and then go to a lawyer, a mediator. You can decide what you want to do, and then get that converted into a consent order, which is obviously setting out the terms of your financial agreement, which is obviously you want to have a clean break with a little statement that goes to the court so they can see what assets you've got, and then the judge will
Yeah.
decide and basically rubber stamp, as they call it, and give you your order, and then you're free to go. If you can, at any stage people can come to agreement and do that. So even if you've got to obviously, what they would call, if you do it amicably, you still would then issue proceedings only to, it's called notice of dismissal. So you dismiss the claims at the same time as you're making your application, so that basically the court can then obviously look at that paperwork, decide on it, and make the order. If you've gone through the whole court process, you can still, obviously, I mean, the court may order it. If you had to go to a final hearing, the court might order a clean break. I mean, that's, it's depending on whether you decide or whether the court decides. So at any stage, yes, I mean, you can decide, but obviously it's going to really depend upon your assets. Say, for example, if you're a simple example is a very young couple, haven't been married very long, pretty much got their own things, pension such a long way off, got their own earning capacity, decide to split what they've got, clean break, move on. And that's, and then obviously for older couples, if there's a lot of capital and they can do it, it's the same principle. It's often harder when you've got that middle range family where they haven't quite got enough money to buy somebody out, and you've got some dependency which needs to be covered. But still with the view of trying to get someone independent. Like if someone might need to be retrained, for example, and that's when you're going to get the step down when they can start earning some money, but they've got to retrain. They may need money to do that, time to do it before they can stand on their own 2 feet. So again, lots of different scenarios.
One question I often get asked by my clients is, if I don't get a clean break order at the time of the divorce, can I do it later? And for, how long am I allowed to ask for it?
Well, again, that's the interesting one, because we have the situation where they could have done the divorce and then they could do the finances later. They can. It's not ideal. You do want to do it, but if you forget to do it or you didn't realise you could do it or how it works, then yes, you just have to make sure you don't win the lottery in the meantime. Someone comes back to you.
But you can do it at any time after the divorce. There's no limitation in terms of the number of years or anything like that.
You can, but I think it's it's ideal to actually sort it out, because if you think about it, you do need to think about if you one of the key things people need to think about is especially if you've got children, your wills, your inheritance, your money, your property, your assets, because if your only property is how you own the property. If you own it as joint, it will inheritance pass to your spouse. Think about your will. So you've got divorced, but then you've got the settlement. You still have a property that's owned. You have joint owners, and you have things passed by survivorship and all that sort of stuff. So you have to think about all the reasons why you actually, when you get divorced, that legal status has changed, and therefore all the knock-on effect for the legal status of all the other legal things that you might have together. So if you just leave it and do nothing, I mean, if you haven't got any assets, that's just often the case actually, where people don't deal with things straight away because they think, well, we actually don't have anything, so we just need to get divorced and one thing. Yes, but that's where the case when you literally would have a sort of very short piece of paper and a very small document which gives you clean break, because that protects you from someone coming back.
The big problem is the unknown, right? What might happen in the future? Then you're exposing yourself to having some potential claims.
Exactly. And that is always the thing. It's like you don't think about it now, but it's not impacting you now. And then suddenly it comes back to bite you because you didn't deal with it. But hey, I speak to so many people all the time who've divorced and they don't have a financial settlement or an order. And they say, but I'm divorced. I'm saying, oh, but did you sort that out? Did I need to? And I thought, oh gosh. And I said, well, actually, maybe you should, literally, even if you don't have anything. So, but in most people's cases, there will be something, and they should make sure that it's dealt with. And then you have a clean slate and you haven't got to worry about it. Because let's face it, the process is stressful enough as it is going through it. You don't want to suddenly find 5 years down the line that someone comes back.
Absolutely.
When you try to move on with your life. I mean, it's very destructive.
And I think I see that a lot with my clients. And I remember myself, when I was going through divorce, finding it very odd that I could get divorced but not have a financial order or children arrangement order. In some countries, it's all bundled together. But in the UK, they are 3 different processes, 3 different approaches and orders to finalize. So it's not just getting divorced. It's also having some sort of order around the finances and also thinking about the children.
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. I mean, that's the thing. You've got to think about, all of those things. And get them all sorted out. And so that you can, as best as you can, see the children arrangements is always an interesting one, as you are an expert at dealing with that.
Emotional.
So you know that exactly. So there is a lot to deal with. And I think that's part of the overwhelm, which you obviously as a coach, dealing with, essentially that people are so overwhelmed they they don't know because they don't know to ask because they don't know.
Yeah.
What you don't know, you
That's
don't
exactly
know.
right. Yeah.
And then it's like pointing out to them, have you thought about this? And did you realize this? And are you aware of that? And you actually can do this. And these are your options. And giving people options is one of the greatest ways of moving them forward through this process as well, because it's when we're stuck and when we think we've got no way forward and we don't know and everything's coming in and it's like there's too much information and I need you to help me kind of to just settle this down and tell me what do I need to do next and how do I do it? And can you help me?
And that's why the options you outlined earlier with regards to maintenance are really helpful for people to understand as well, just so they understand the consequences of their decisions and that there are different options available, different models that they can follow.
Yes, definitely. I think that's the thing. Knowing your options is important. So because you can't make decisions unless you have the information, right? And it's having the right information, otherwise you make poor decisions.
Yes, I think that's key to coaching, and it's definitely the value of speaking to a lawyer to have that information up front and be sure that you're looking at all the data before making those decisions. So, Celia, I like to finish my podcast by asking my guests to share 3 tips. So, in this context, what would be your 3 tips to somebody who is seeking a financial order and who's wondering whether they should go for a clean break or not?
Well, certainly this is obviously the legal side, so I would say get some legal guidance anyway.
Yeah.
And that's the first step. And then obviously, decision that's right for you and something that's going to be workable moving forward.
Yeah. That's a very good tips. And I think that's exactly what you were referring to earlier, is that there's no one size fits all. It's based on your specific context, your divorce, your financial situation. So it's understanding those options and tailoring them to your situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you have to do. And as you say, yes, there is no one size fits all solution, but it's like it's what fits for you.
Yeah. Well, this is really helpful. I hope it gave a lot of information to those who are new to this topic, because it is a complicated one and one that's often misunderstood. So thank you so much for sharing your insights with us and for telling us everything we need to know, answering all my questions. And thanks so much, Celia.
Thank you. Thanks. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.